Have you ever been in a moment where just one tiny, seemingly insignificant piece of information completely changed everything? Your understanding, maybe, or even the outcome of something really important.
Oh, definitely. Like, you misread one step in a recipe.
Right. And dinner's a disaster. Or maybe you overlooked a single clause in a contract.
Yeah, that can fundamentally alter the whole deal. Or think about mysteries, one tiny clue missed, and the case stays cold.
Exactly. Those moments aren't just, frustrating. They really show how much weight can hide in the smallest details.
Absolutely. The fine print matters.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your sources, dig deep, and pull out the most potent insights so you get a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
And today we're plunging into the, frankly, fascinating world of critical thinking. Our main guide is a really comprehensive text on understanding arguments and evidence.
Our mission for this deep dive. We really want to zero in on the power of precision itself.
That's it. How paying really close attention sharpens our judgment, makes our communication clearer, and honestly, empowers us in pretty much every part of life.
From decoding dense academic stuff to just handling the flood of info we get every day.
And even crucially, landing that dream job.
Yeah.
Mastering the nuances, the specifics, well, that can be your secret weapon.
So by the end of this, you won't just know what critical thinking is in theory. You'll really get why the tiny details, the granular bits of information are so vital.
And maybe most importantly, how to actually apply that microscopic lens to arguments, evidence, even your own thoughts.
Get ready for some aha moments about the power of being precise. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's lay the groundwork first. What is critical thinking really? And how does this intense focus on the minute details fit into such a big concept?
Well, at its core, critical thinking isn't just one single skill. It's more like a rigorous mental workout.
Right.
It's a deliberate process. You engage with information, you identify the main positions, you dissect arguments, evaluate the evidence really carefully.
Weighing up opposing views fairly.
Exactly. And then with all that, you synthesize your own well-supported judgments. It's a whole cognitive suite of skills.
And it's really about drawing conclusions based on reasons that are logically sound, right? Inferences that are valid. But maybe just as important is what it isn't. Because I think a lot of people get this wrong.
That's a crucial distinction, yeah. Critical thinking is definitely not just firing off an opinion.
Or just listing facts.
Or just, having a casual chat or giving your thoughts on something. And it's certainly not about believing things just because we want them to be true. It's much more disciplined.
So it's not just gut feeling.
Not at all. And here's the direct link to precision. The source makes it clear that effective critical reasoning requires grasping the overall argument, sure, but also the skill to analyze and evaluate it in detail, every single component.
Every premise, every bit of supporting info.
It all needs that careful, granular look. You can't just get the gist.
That makes perfect sense. It immediately shows why focusing on precision is so central. You have to dig into the specifics. So, what are the actual tangible benefits of cultivating this sharp eye for detail? What does the source say we gain?
The practical upsides are pretty significant. The source points directly to achieving greater accuracy and precision to different parts of a task.
Okay, so fewer mistakes.
Fewer mistakes, definitely. Think about it when you're meticulous, you stop those small slips turning into big problems. Sharpening our minds lets us spot when we need to slow down and apply more systematic critiques.
Our own thinking and actions.
Exactly. And that's vital because it guards against errors, superficial understanding, unconscious bias, unfairness, errors of judgment that, as the source says, could have serious consequences.
Serious consequences. That really lands. It's not just about grades. It's about making solid decisions in life. What else does this level of attention unlock?
Well, looking more broadly, this meticulous approach helps build better problem-solving skills, like identifying where things could be improved, evaluating potential solutions.
Makes sense. You see the flaws more clearly.
You do. You also gain greater speed and accuracy in analyzing complex information. And, maybe just as important, you build confidence in taking on more complex problems and challenges.
So it empowers you.
Fundamentally. Ultimately, honing this way of thinking gives us this amazing possibility of seeing the world through different eyes with sharper awareness. You're not just absorbing info, you're perceiving it, understanding it much more deeply, seeing patterns others miss.
That sounds genuinely transformative. And the source actually breaks this down further, right? Into specific sub-skills that feed into this precision focus. It's not just a personality trait.
Not at all. The source talks about how our attentional processes are key. It involves focusing attention so as to recognize the significance of fine details.
Spotting the little things that matter.
Exactly. And crucially, using attention to fine detail in order to recognize patterns, such as similarities and differences, absence and presence, order and sequence.
Wow, okay, so pattern recognition based on specifics.
Yes, and these skills are called essential. At every age, for everyone, in all contexts. Doesn't matter if you're a student, a professional analyzing data, or just navigating daily life. These micro-level skills are foundational to real understanding.
It really sounds like training your brain to spot what others just gloss over. But if it's so useful, what stops us? What are the common hurdles? Why isn't everyone super detail-oriented?
Well, one direct barrier our source mentions is simply insufficient focus and attention to detail. It's just so easy to slip into, repeating something we heard or describing what we read without really thinking about it.
Mistaking information for understanding.
Precisely. Or we just assume some points are self-evidently true without pausing to really scrutinize the specifics underneath. We just accept them.
Which brings us to something maybe a bit uncomfortable. The courage needed for critical self-evaluation. It's hard looking closely at your own thinking, your biases, admitting you might have missed crucial details.
It absolutely is, especially when you get that feedback, right? Those slightly mysterious words, more critical analysis needed.
Oh, everyone dreads those.
Right, because being truly critical means you have to be willing to re-examine what you thought you knew. And that takes some vulnerability, a real commitment to precision in your own thinking.
Confronting those moments where maybe your focus slipped or you skipped over something small but important.
That's where the real intellectual growth happens, that willingness to scrutinize your own mental processes.
Okay, so we've established why this meticulous attention is so vital. But knowing why isn't enough. The real trick is how to apply it when you're faced with, well, a constant stream of information. Let's talk about decoding messages, getting to the core of what someone's actually trying to say.
Right. And critical thinking, our source points out, helps you identify the obvious and the hidden messages more accurately, and also to understand the process, the structure of how an argument is actually built.
And the source is very clear about what an argument means here, isn't it? It's not just disagreeing.
No, not at all. In critical thinking, an argument is about persuasion through reasons. It always has a position, a point of view, and then a deliberate attempt to persuade you using a logical series of reasons.
The source gives that great Pitt's End example.
Yeah.
The conclusion is clear. Pitt's End should become a site of major archaeological importance.
Okay, straightforward claim.
But what makes it an argument are the specifics used to back it up. The unearthed stones, their oval shape, the spacing, the geological dating, the ancient tools found nearby.
So it's the collection of details, each one a supporting proposition.
Exactly. Each one bolsters the main claim. And while, hunting out the conclusion or looking for signal words can give you a quick starting point.
It's only a starting point.
Right. The real critical work starts when you scrutinize how those details build the case. You have to ask if just one of those details, say the geological dating, turned out wrong.
Would the whole argument crumble? Often, yes, which shows how fragile arguments can be without meticulous support in every part.
That's a perfect lead-in to differentiating real arguments from things that just look like arguments. Our source is firm. Disagreement is not the same as argument in critical thinking. Why is that distinction so important?
Because a simple disagreement lacks reasons. Just saying, that doesn't convince me. I think genetic engineering is really exciting. That's a feeling, an opinion. But there's no reasoning offered, no specifics to evaluate.
Right. No why. And then there's description. Description is not argument.
Correct. Description just tells you how or what something is like. Think about describing the symptoms of a medical condition or summarizing the plot of a play like Romeo and Juliet.
It's reporting facts or observations, not trying to persuade you to adopt a viewpoint.
Then we have explanations, also not arguments. Explanations tell you why something happened, not try to persuade you of something.
Like the student being late example. Panfire, lost keys, postwoman's device.
Exactly. Those are all reasons for lateness. They explain the situation. They don't form an argument advancing a specific position that you need to accept or reject. Just details explaining why.
And summaries. Even if they use signal words, they're just pulling out main points, right? Not arguing.
Precisely. Like the summary of Csikszentmihalyi's work mentioned, it extracts key ideas, but it isn't trying to convince you of a new thesis. So what's the payoff for making all these fine distinctions? Why bother?
Good question. The source says it's because arguments can become lost within other details. So this practice helps you more easily isolate the relevant material, the actual argument.
So it's a filtering skill.
Exactly. It also helps improve reading speed and accuracy because you learn to zoom in on what really matters and filter out the noise, training your brain to spot the core argument.
Spotting the important particulars versus the fluff. And speaking of noise, arguments rarely appear neatly packaged, do they? They're usually surrounded by introductions, descriptions, background info, summaries.
All sorts of extraneous material, as the source calls it. And that stuff can easily hide or obscure the actual argument.
Absolutely. The Olas Magnus C-map example illustrates this perfectly. The core argument is that the map accurately shows an ocean eddy current.
Okay.
But that claim is buried in details about when it was made, 1539, descriptions of sea monsters, the belief it was just art, background on the map maker talking to mariners.
So you have to actively pull the argument out from all that surrounding description and content.
You do. It highlights the importance of discerning the salient characteristics, the specific points that actually drive the argument forward from all the interesting but maybe irrelevant surrounding details. You need precision in identifying what's core versus what's just context.
All right, we know how to find the argument now and separate it from the noise. Let's get into the argument's actual structure, how it holds together, or maybe how it falls apart. First up, internal consistency and logical flow. How do the details build that cohesion?
Internal consistency basically means that all parts of the line of reasoning contribute to the conclusion. Nothing should contradict or undermine the main message.
So everything pulls in the same direction.
Ideally, yes. When an argument lacks that, it gets really confusing. You're left wondering what the author actually wants you to believe. The problem often lies in a subtle mismatch between the different parts of the reasoning.
Like the gears not quite meshing. If the details aren't aligned, the whole thing can just, well, wobble. The source has that brilliant apples are good for your teeth example.
Yes.
The argument starts there, but then it shifts. It says apples are more beneficial than alternative snacks because their acid cleans teeth. But wait, acid isn't generally seen as good for teeth in that simple way.
Exactly. That subtle shift in the specific claim about why they're beneficial reveals an internal inconsistency. The reasoning contradicts itself slightly, a flaw in the details.
It's a classic kind of slip-up. The rural versus inner city schools example is another good one.
Right. The argument there is that better behavior in rural kids comes from home responsibilities, not the schools.
Okay, that's the premise.
So the proposed solution, moving city kids to rural schools, doesn't actually follow logically, because the solution doesn't address the specific cause the argument itself identified. The proposed solution is inconsistent with the stated problem's cause.
That makes sense. So how do these reasons, these supporting details, actually work together? Are there different ways they support a conclusion?
Yeah, the source talks about joint reasons. These are details that reinforce each other working together. And independent reasons, these can stand on their own, supporting the conclusion even if other reasons are removed.
So different structural supports.
Kind of, and arguments can get complex. The source introduces intermediate conclusions. Think of them as stepping stones.
Mini conclusions along the way.
Exactly. They summarize a set of reasons before building towards the final overall conclusion. The example used is a complex argument about smokers' rights, showing how these intermediate steps create a clear logical path for the reader. Each step rests on its own specific reasons.
So each intermediate conclusion is built on its own set of precise details, and then these conclusions stack up to support the main point. And the source also makes a really key distinction between summative and logical conclusions.
Yes, this is crucial for judging the argument's rigor. A summative conclusion just restates or summarizes the points already made. Like in the organic food taste debate example, the author just presents two sides without really deducing anything new based on reasons.
Just recapping.
Whereas a logical conclusion is rigorously deduced from the reasons and evidence presented. It forms a genuine, persuasive endpoint based on the preceding details. The strength or weakness depends entirely on how meticulously that conclusion is derived from the specifics provided.
Okay, so we've looked at the visible structure. But what about the hidden stuff? The unstated assumptions that are still critical for the argument to even work?
Yes. Implicit assumptions and false premises. Assumptions are basically anything that is taken for granted in the presentation of an argument. Unstated ideas, beliefs, facts that must be true for the conclusion to hold water.
And authors sometimes use these hidden assumptions as reasons, right? Essentially jumping to conclusions.
They do. It's often the absence of a stated detail or reason that becomes critical. You have to spot what isn't being said but is being relied upon.
The examinations in students with disabilities example nails this. The conclusion is that these students get an unfair advantage.
Okay.
But that entirely hinges on an implicit, unstated assumption that the students actually use the extra time specifically to finish their last question with less rush.
Right. If that specific assumption isn't true or isn't proven.
The whole argument collapses. It's like a hidden pillar holding it up. You have to be precise enough to spot it's even there.
Exactly. And then you have false premises. These are propositions the author believes are true and uses as the foundation for their argument, but they actually turn out to be wrong.
Like building on shaky ground.
Precisely. The festival example is great here. Organizers expected 500,000 people because of a nearby solar eclipse. That was their premise.
But only 70,000 showed up.
Right. The argument about the festival's potential success was predicated on incorrect assumptions. When those underlying details, those premises are wrong, the whole argument is built on false premises.
It's like that skyscraper on quicksand idea. Now, beyond the logic, the precision of the language itself is incredibly powerful. Denoted meanings, connoted meanings, associations, stereotypes.
Yes, language is slippery. Messages have both denoted, meaning the literal dictionary definition.
Like a 100-pound reduction on all computers. Clear, explicit.
Or, you too could have a life in the sun. Straightforward offer. But then you have connoted meanings, the latent subconscious stuff.
And these are powerful because they act on the unconscious. The source uses gold. It literally means a metal. But it connotes excellence, wealth, maybe a lasting relationship.
The subtle emotional or cultural baggage attached to the word?
Exactly. Which leads to associations and stereotypes. Words or ideas trigger culturally shared connections, sometimes prejudices.
Like the example of signs. Men's bathrooms for doctors, ladies' bathrooms for nurses. That reinforces gender stereotypes through implied associations linked to those specific job titles.
Or assuming red hair means a bad temper. Just ingrained cultural shortcuts, often based on flimsy specifics.
And the political party example shows this in action. Calling opponents policy changes like the wind blows subtly implies they're unreliable.
While calling your own leader a captain suggests strong command.
Right. The precise choice of words, the metaphors, they sway opinion way beyond the literal message. Identifying these latent messages, these connotations hidden in the details of the language, is crucial for evaluating arguments fairly. You see, when persuasion comes from emotion or cultural bias, not just logic.
Okay, we've covered decoding and dissecting arguments. But, as you said, even if an argument seems to have all the parts, it could still collapse if its reasoning is flawed. So now we get into spotting common logical fallacies. The places where the precision, the specifics just break down.
Yeah, and what's really striking is how easily we can confuse correlation with causation. It happens all the time.
The source gives that example about obesity supposedly increasing life expectancy.
Right, passage 7.1. Just because both were higher in Western countries at a certain time. But that's just correlation. The specific causal link is completely missing and probably wrong.
And the rooftop protests secure release example.
Passage 7.2. It shows that just because one thing happens after another doesn't mean the first thing caused the second. The protest happened, then the release happened. But were there other factors, other specific reasons for the release? The argument doesn't prove the direct causal chain.
It assumes a connection without proving the precise mechanism. We see this constantly, right? Two trends moving together doesn't mean one causes the other.
Like the ice cream and sandal sales example. Both go up in summer.
But ice cream doesn't cause sandal sales, or vice versa.
Exactly. It's the shared context, the warm weather, that's the actual causal factor, influencing both specifics independently. Or the example of car crime rising as car color variety increases. Pure coincidence. No logical link between those particular details.
So we need to be precise about what is actually causing what. Now, what about situations where something is necessary, but maybe not sufficient?
The necessary versus sufficient conditions. This trips people up a lot. A necessary condition has to be there for something to happen, but just because it's there doesn't prove the outcome.
Okay.
A sufficient condition, though, if it's present, does guarantee the outcome. The source uses the bacteria in the mastodon skeleton example. Finding bacteria might be necessary to argue it's a certain age.
But it's not sufficient proof on its own.
Right, because other variables, other specific factors like wind dispersion carrying bacteria haven't been ruled out meticulously.
And the classic bird example.
Birds have wings. This thing has wings, therefore, it's a bird. Wings are necessary for most birds, yes, but they aren't sufficient proof because bats and insects also have wings. It's about nailing down the exact requirements for proof.
That's incredibly clear. Now, beyond these logical slips, arguments can be twisted using rhetoric and emotion. How do these tactics mess with the details?
Well, one common set of tactics involves deflection, creating complicity, or exclusion, using phrases like, as we all know, or anyone with any sense realizes.
The appeal to common sense or making you feel stupid if you disagree.
Exactly. It tries to create an us versus them divide, enticing agreement by implying consensus. The identity cards example, passage 7.18, shows this well. Opponents aren't argued against based on their points. They're just attacked personally, stereotyped as wishy-washy liberals.
So it deflects from the actual substance, the specific arguments, by attacking the person.
Precisely. And then there's outright misrepresentation, which is really insidious in how it twists specifics.
How does that work?
It distorts arguments by presenting the options or opposing arguments in an unfair or unbalanced way. Maybe ignoring the main reasons the opposition gives.
Or presenting a false choice.
Yes, the false dilemma, or either a fallacy, like the example. We must have this curfew or face savage assaults on the streets. It ignores other potential solutions, other specific options.
Forcing a choice between two extremes.
Or misrepresenting a person by attacking their character instead of the merits of their argument. Discrediting a managing director because of a seedy affair, or dismissing Einstein because he struggled with math early on. It's all distraction from the factual basis, the actual reasoning, by attacking irrelevant personal specifics.
And emotive language plays a huge role here, doesn't it? Using loaded words.
Absolutely. Words designed to provoke emotion. Poor little children, savage assaults, seedy affair. They can manipulate the audience, make them less critical of the reasoning.
Because you react emotionally, not logically.
Exactly. When things feel emotionally charged, it's a big red flag to double-check the underlying reasoning very carefully. Don't let the emotional details cloud the logical ones. The subtle choice of words can completely hijack your rational assessment.
Good advice. And finally, the source mentions the castle of cards approach and other misleading structures. What's that about?
The castle of cards, the example, is about internet copying. Passage 7.16 is where you stack up a series of unsubstantiated claims. Claims that haven't been proven with specific evidence.
Okay.
If just one of those claims turns out to be false, the whole argument built on top of it collapses, like assuming no one caught copying could possibly be charged. If that specific assumption is wrong, the whole argument falls.
So the entire structure depends on every single unproven detail being true, like a chain being only as strong as its weakest link. What about tautology?
Tautology is basically circular reasoning. Each sentence just repeats the same idea using different words. It doesn't actually progress or add anything new.
Like the example. The public's knowledge of health is poor, and more money is needed for education in this area.
Right. The second part just restates the first part in different terms. It offers no new insight, no specific evidence or mechanism. It's an argument spinning its wheels.
And the two wrongs don't make a right fallacy. Using one bad situation to justify another.
Yeah, like justifying stealing from work because you feel your employer exploits you, or a council selling assets cheaply because the previous council did it too. It tries to use one set of flawed specifics to excuse another, ignoring the actual ethical or logical details of the current situation.
In all these cases, it seems the core issue is a breakdown in precision misinterpreting connections, ignoring key details, or deliberately muddying the specifics.
That's exactly it. Recognizing these patterns, these subtle ways arguments can fail due to lack of precision, is absolutely key to strong critical thinking.
We've looked deep into argument structures and how they can go wrong. Now, let's get to the bedrock, the evidence itself. To really evaluate an argument, you often need to check the facts behind the reasons, and that means meticulously evaluating the sources. Let's start with the basics. Primary versus secondary sources.
Right, and the distinction here is really clear and important. Primary sources are the raw material. Think original data, historical documents, eyewitness accounts, maybe social media posts from the time something happened.
First-hand information, the closest you can get to the original event or data point.
Exactly, whereas secondary sources are things written about those primary sources, books analyzing historical events, articles reviewing scientific studies, biographies, commentaries.
They offer interpretation, analysis, they're a step removed.
Correct. So the crucial thing for critical evaluation is being able to, ideally, trace arguments back to the primary sources. You want to see the original details for yourself. Check if the interpretation in the secondary source holds up.
Makes sense. Check the foundation. Now, how do we judge credibility? What makes a source reputable, and how do we assess if it's even authentic?
A reputable source is generally one with high credibility likely to be accurate, often peer-reviewed in academic contexts or recommended by trusted experts. You often look for signs like a clear line of reasoning, solid supporting evidence, detailed references, the hallmarks of careful work.
Okay, quality markers. But then there's authenticity. Is this thing actually what it claims to be?
Yes, of undisputed origin. Is that medieval manuscript really from the medieval period? The source contrasts finding one in a cathedral library versus the secondhand bookshop context matters for authenticity.
Or a collection of Elvis autographs. How do you verify each one?
It can be incredibly difficult. The example of faking something complex, like a Viking ship, highlights the huge authentication challenges. Experts need meticulous precision, examining every detail, every material, every contextual clue to confirm authenticity.
So even tiny discrepancies in the physical details or the provenance could raise red flags about authenticity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A single anachronistic detail could undermine the whole thing. And we also need to consider currency. How up-to-date is the source? Especially in fields that change fast, like science or technology.
A perfectly precise study from 20 years ago might be irrelevant now because of new findings.
Exactly. The timeliness of the details matters hugely.
Now, the source also warns about generalization and variables. Why is precision in the data itself so critical? Let's start with generalizing from a single case. Why is that usually a bad idea?
Because one instance rarely represents the whole picture, the example given. Just because your friend doesn't mind being called names doesn't mean there is no harm in calling people names, as a general rule.
One person's specific reaction doesn't define everyone's.
Right. And while a single exception can disprove a universal rule, like one helium balloon rising, proves that not all dropped objects fall, it doesn't invalidate the general principle for most objects. You need more data than one specific observation to make a broad claim, trying to describe a whole forest based on just one tree, basically.
Which leads us to representative samples in research. If you're collecting data, the specific characteristics of who or what you study are vital, aren't they?
Absolutely critical. Samples must be representative of the larger population or situation you're studying. Otherwise, your conclusions are likely flawed.
Like the examples in the source. The carrot extract experiment with mostly men.
Yes, or the soap preference survey focusing only on certain age groups. If the sample doesn't mirror the population's key demographic features, age, gender, background, whatever's relevant, then the results can't be reliably generalized.
The bereavement counseling study also highlights this, right? So many variables to consider.
Exactly. The relationship to the person who died, the type of work the bereaved person does, countless specific factors or variables could influence the outcome. Ignoring these means you're not getting an accurate picture because you haven't controlled for potentially crucial influencing factors.
So precision in sample selection and variable control is key. What about statistical significance? How do we know if a result is real or just chance? What specific indicators should we look for?
Well, small samples often lead to results that are not statistically significant, meaning the pattern you observed could easily just be a fluke, a coincidence.
So how do we check?
We need to look for statistical measures, often reported as p-values. A very small p-value, like p less than 0.0001, is a crucial detail.
What does that p-value actually tell us?
It tells you the probability that the result you observed would happen purely by random chance if there was actually no real effect. So a tiny p-value means it's extremely unlikely the result is just random noise. It suggests there's a genuine statistically significant effect or pattern in the data. It's a precise measure of confidence.
Got it. Without that statistical rigor, you're just making educated guesses based on potentially random patterns. And then there's controlling for variables, making sure other factors aren't messing up your results.
Right. Variables are any circumstances that might affect the outcome in intended or unintended ways. The South African grape example is perfect.
The vine thrived there, but failed in California.
Yes, even though the soil and rainfall seemed similar. Why? Uncontrolled environmental variables, maybe different pests, different soil microbes, subtle climate differences. It shows you need meticulous control, paying attention to all relevant conditions, all the specific factors that could influence the outcome.
Okay, finally, triangulation and cross-verification, using multiple sources to get closer to the truth.
Exactly. Triangulation means using several different types of sources, maybe official records, other witness testimonies, video footage, physical evidence to corroborate a witness testimony and verify the details.
Because any single source might be flawed or biased.
Precisely. The source notes the varying levels of accuracy in personal testimonies. Witnesses might be trying to be helpful or protective, or they might have a vested interest or be intimidated or simply lack expertise. Their motivations and situation affect the reliability of their specific account.
So you have to consider the context of each piece of evidence.
You do. And when triangulating, it's vital to be comparing like with like. Are the different sources actually talking about the exact same event? Are they using words in the same way? The precision of the comparison itself is crucial.
It really emphasizes that truth often emerges from carefully piecing together and scrutinizing multiple specific details from different angles, rather than just taking one source at face value.
That's the essence of meticulous source evaluation.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground on understanding arguments and evidence with precision. Now, let's bring it home. How do we apply this power of critical precision in our daily lives? Both when we're taking information in and when we're creating our own arguments or communications. Let's start with mastering information intake.
Right, because accurate interpretation is absolutely fundamental. It stops us making wrong assumptions based on misreading the details. The source points out two common pitfalls here.
Which are?
One is over-focused reading, going too slow, getting bogged down in individual words, and missing the bigger picture, the overall flow.
Losing the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And the other is the opposite. Insufficient attention to details, skimming too fast, missing crucial nuances, subtle shifts in meaning.
So the goal is finding that balance, the big picture and the fine detail, as the source says.
That's the constant challenge, seeing both simultaneously, which connects directly to effective note-taking. It's not just about passively copying stuff down.
No, the source stresses critical selection.
No, it's about actively selecting what to write down. And doing that brings multiple benefits. You engage more deeply with the material, your motor memory helps recall, and you actually do less work later because you've already processed and distilled the key, precise points.
So your notes should be structured, selective, and crucially, in your own words.
Ideally, yes. They should reflect your critical analysis. What were the strengths, the weaknesses? How does this source connect to or challenge other arguments you've encountered? It's about capturing the right insights, the most significant details.
And what about listening? Say, to a talk or even this deep dive, how do we listen with that critical precision?
Good question. The strategies are similar. Prepare beforehand if you can. Really focus your attention. Minimize distractions. Try to identify the main position or conclusion early on.
And jot down the key supporting arguments.
Briefly, yes. But what's really powerful is the idea of actively reviewing, maybe even replaying specific sections to really challenge the arguments, spot the flaws, look for irrelevant data, facts, or anecdotes employed to create a false sense of authority.
So listening isn't passive reception, it's active engagement, constantly probing the details.
Exactly. It requires sustained focus and a sharp ear for those subtle tactics or logical gaps.
Now, this critical approach, this focus on precision, it also applies when we create information, right? Especially in critical writing. What does that look like?
Critical writing isn't just summarizing. It involves testing and defending a central argument, your thesis. It means meticulously defining your terms, using your sources critically, not just accepting them, identifying themes, and really shaping your thinking through the writing process.
And defining terms seems particularly crucial for precision.
Absolutely. You have to clarify key concepts and any specialist language you use. The student well-being example is perfect. What do you mean by student? School kids, university students. And what does well-being encompass? Physical health, mental health, both.
Nailing down those specific definitions.
It clarifies your own thinking and it focuses your research and your writing. It sets precise boundaries for your argument.
And how do you guide the reader through your carefully constructed argument? Keep them on track.
That's where signposting comes in. Using those specific words and phrases that structure the reasoning, first of all, furthermore, on the other hand, therefore, in conclusion.
The navigational marking.
Exactly. They make the structure explicit. They tell the reader exactly which stage of the argument they're at and where the reasoning is heading next. It's about being rigorously clear in presenting the detailed flow of your logic.
Speaking of rigorous detail, citing and referencing sources. This feels like the ultimate test of precision in academic work.
Oh, it absolutely is. For any academic writing, you must provide details or references of all the source materials, and this requires extreme attention to detail.
Getting the style right, the exact sequence, all the punctuation, the abbreviations.
Every single tiny element has to be correct according to the required style guide. And the source gives a stark warning. Getting these details wrong can lead to poor marks or even accusations of plagiarism. The minutiae here are non-negotiable.
In this critical lens, this demand for precision, we should apply it to our own work too, right? Before anyone else sees it.
Yes, absolutely. Using checklists or criteria to evaluate your own arguments. Is it clear, consistent? Is the logic sound? Are the reasons relevant? Is it free from manipulative, emotional language? Are the sources reliable? Are the citations accurate?
That self-assessment step, applying that same meticulous scrutiny inward.
It's a crucial final check, ensuring you've met the high standards of precision you'd expect from others.
Okay, let's bring this right into our personal and professional lives. Critical reflection, and then the big one, career applications. How does this deep dive into precision help us there?
Well, critical reflection is about active working with the raw material of your experience, making sense of situations, events, your role in them, the broader context.
And then sifting through those reflections, selecting key insights.
Right. It demands a really detailed, honest look at your own experiences and actions, looking for patterns, implications, specifics you might otherwise just gloss over.
And that feeds into professional judgment, making good calls at work.
Directly. Understanding when it's right to deviate from standard procedures or how to act when there is no procedure, that requires a very precise understanding of both the theory and the practical specifics of the situation. The nuances tell you if the standard way needs adjusting. Which brings us to maybe the most practical application, job applications. This is where a lack of precision can really bite you. Employers actively want employees who can apply critical abilities.
And one of the most common mistakes applicants make.
Explicitly listed in the source, lack of attention to detail.
Ouch. What does that look like in practice?
It's a whole range of things, not addressing every single point in the person's specification, forgetting to include requested information, specific dates, salary details, qualifications, gaps in the work history, and, of course, silly mistakes such as spelling errors or getting the company name wrong.
Tiny errors that send a big negative signal about your carefulness.
Exactly. And then there's the killer mistake, stating one thing, demonstrating the opposite.
Like claiming you have good communication skills or good attention to detail.
And then submitting an application full of typos, grammatical errors, or vague, poorly phrased sentences. It completely undermines your claim because the specific evidence of your application contradicts you, a self-inflicted wound caused by lack of precision.
So how you present yourself, the selectivity you show, and highlighting relevant experience.
That provides evidence of the strength of your critical thinking skills. You have to substantiate your claims. Use precise vocabulary. Tailor your examples to their business context. Show how your abilities are relevant. Every single detail in that application, spelling, grammar, relevance, clarity, contributes to the overall impression of your critical abilities. It really is the ultimate test of applying precision under pressure. #outro.
Wow. So we've really journeyed through the landscape of critical thinking, haven't we? And the constant thread, the recurring theme, has been the absolute power of precision, of mastering the details.
It really has. From spotting hidden assumptions and arguments to verifying the authenticity of sources, crafting clear reasoning, even nailing a job application. It all comes down to how carefully you handle the specifics.
It's clear that real understanding, deep comprehension, it isn't just about getting the general idea. It often lies in grasping those granular elements correctly.
That ability to focus on and accurately interpret the fine points, that's what separates superficial engagement from genuine insight. It really can change how you see everything.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? Well, next time you come across a new piece of information or persuasive argument, or maybe even when you're just reflecting on your own day or preparing something important,
challenge yourself. Ask. What are the tiny details, the nuances I might be overlooking here? What assumptions am I making without even realizing it?
Remember, the path to truly deep understanding, to making sound judgments, often lies hidden in plain sight, just waiting for that discerning eye. The eye that pays a meticulous attention to every single element.
What unexpected insights, what new understanding might you unlock just by looking a little closer?